In light of the major press event about the NAZCA mummies tomorrow, I thought it'd be a really good idea to go over some of the research that's been done on them. So get in here, this is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. Yeah, I'm just so excited about the press event tomorrow with the unveiling of the 2 new specimens. I think they've already shown one. Maybe they've shown both. Hopefully we're going to get a giant. I'm not holding my breath on the giant, but they have definitely teased the giant. So hopefully that's what we're going to get. But at the very least, we're going to get some more NAZCA mummy goodness and some more research. And this is going to be in a very public, very big way right there in Los Angeles. So I love it. I love it. But yeah, what about the NAZCA mummies? What are these guys? For those of you who haven't been following the story, or those who want to go over the research in more detail, and again, I have put together basically a clip show of some of the videos that I've made on the NAZCA mummies, going over the research that's been done on these amazing specimens. We've got alien bodies, y'all. We've got alien bodies. This is UFO disclosure. But for those of you who aren't sold on that, I hope you will, check out this video to see the research that has been done, so you can see, yeah, these aren't dolls. These aren't ritual dolls or hoaxes or whatever. These are authentic specimens. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of the researchers, or the doctors and the scientists, dozens of them. I think there's 40 of them or so that have looked at these amazing bodies and determined they are authentic, genuine specimens. So, they were once living beings, put it that way. Well, are they aliens? Are they hybrids? Who knows? I tend to think they're more hybrids, at least some of them. But anyway, enough from me, enough preamble. Let's go right to the research. Okay, here's what Jaime Maussan had to say. I'm muting it because there's music playing. And here is the unveiling of the mummies. I think that's really interesting that they would choose this as the evidence. I was really hoping for something new, but instead we get these old mummies. But maybe there has been new analysis done.
The alien bodies that we're seeing were actually recovered in a mine in Peru. They were found in 2017 between Palpa and Nazca. They are not a part of our evolutionary line, and they've been carbon dated to about 1,000 years old. The Mexican government says they are not mummies, the bodies are fully intact, and they have been thoroughly researched. The expansive research done by the government on the alien bodies included X-rays, digital tomography, carbon-14, forensic analysis, biological analysis, genetic analysis, biological computer analysis, analysis of metallic implants, spectrometry, histology, physical analysis, and more. With some very interesting organizations involved in the research, including Abraxas, Lockheed University, and Harrisburg University. And the Mexican government is saying that when they say fully intact, these bodies, they mean fully intact. The bodies are fully preserved, including all internal organs and all DNA that they have put through extreme analysis. They have literally all the information. We know what these extraterrestrials are made of. I wonder if we're in communication with them as well.
Okay, let's go to Reddit. A very helpful Redditor translated what the forensic specialist said about the bodies. It is an honor for me to present on such a high platform the results of my analyses derived from the study of the anatomy of these non-human bodies. As a forensic doctor, in collaboration with the biologist Jose de la Cruz Rios, and based on the results of various scientific evidence, such as X-rays, computed tomography, three-dimensional reconstructions, macroscopic and microscopic analysis, histology, carbon-14, etc., I can affirm that these bodies are not related to human beings. For this purpose, I will start with a description of the images that we'll see next. They are bodies of approximately 60 centimeters long, covered by a white powder that, through electron microscopy, we identify as diatom powder, which allows the desiccation of the bodies as well as the absence of the generation of bacteria, fungi, and cadaveric fauna. The presence of this dust allows the perfect conservation by desiccation of these bodies, causing a natural conservation process over time, which we were able to calculate by applying the carbon-14 test, which indicated and dated an average of 1,000 years old. This makes the place where these bodies were found an ideal place for their conservation and preservation by whoever or those who deposited them at this site in Peru. Entering the topic of anatomy, we can see that they have a humanoid structure that consists of a head, trunk, abdomen, and limbs, which end in tridactyl hands and feet. The bone structure of the entire skeleton shows us perfect harmony and agreement between the joints. The final part of each bone fits perfectly with the bone that allows it, and the wear of these is also observed due to the movement of the specimen's own biomechanics, being very resistant bones, but very light, strong, but like those of the birds. The head is an element of particular interest since it is large in its proportions compared to the body. However, it is a pneumatized skull, that is, with spaces that allow it to be very light but rigid and resistant, with a large intracranial cavity, which evidence that it has, the translation is a little wonky here, which evidence that it was a container for very large brain or neurological material. Likewise, we see that the spaces in the eye orbits are very large in size, which would allow a very wide stereoscopic vision for this specimen. It has very small nostrils and an oral cavity that, due to its jaw joint and absence of teeth, allows us to determine that its nutrition was by swallowing and not by chewing. Here is one of the most outstanding and relevant peculiarities, that they do not have carpal and tarsal bones. The phalanges are direct to the bones of the arm and forearm, in addition to ending in a kind of nail bed for the nail. In that observation of microscopes, we found fingerprints. This would be impossible to replicate. These fingerprints are of particular interest since most specimens on this planet have deep or circular footprints, and the fingerprints of these specimens are completely straight and horizontally linear. Another peculiarity is that some of these bodies have metal implants that are perfectly attached within the skin and towards the surface, making it a very impressive biofunctional fusion. These implants are the alloy of various metals, which among osmium and cadmium stand out, which are currently used for satellite telecommunications. Finally, I will point out the DNA analysis after having been compared with more than 1 million registered species. We found that there is a significant difference between what is known in these bodies. These studies were carried out in various high-level institutions, both national and international, and the results gave evidence that 70% of the genetic material coincides with what is known, but there is a difference of 30%. What is the relevance of this? This would indicate that the difference found of more than 30% is something totally outside the parameter of what is expected, is foreign to what is described and known at this moment by human beings. In conclusion, and for all the above, we can say that these bodies are from a non-human species that has irrefutable differences with what is described in the biology and taxonomy of the Darwinian species evolution tree, without a common or traceable predecessor, or without a descent in evolution still described. I can affirm that these bodies are 100% real, organic and biological, that at the time they had life and are irrefutable evidence in themselves. we are facing the paradigm of describing a new species or the opportunity to accept that there has been contact with other non-human beings that were drawn and pointed out in the past in various cultures throughout the world, such as Peru, Egypt, and Mexico, and that today we can accept their existence among and with us. Thank you very much. Okay, I just finished watching the Mexican UFO hearing, and we've got to talk about it. Oh, and there's a bonus after I talk about the NAZCA mummies and also Maria. That's right, because we're also going to talk about Maria. That was one of the things that they talked about toward the end, was this analysis of the larger mummy known as Maria. I think there may be a few of them, but Maria is really interesting. She doesn't appear to be human. We don't know, I don't want to say that definitively yet. Maybe she has a whole series of crazy mutations, but so her jawbone protruded. She apparently had big bulging eyes. Of course, she's got 3 fingers. She just doesn't make a lot of sense. Her arms are more gorilla-like. She doesn't appear to have been able to stand in the way that we do. One of the researchers called her a hybrid, and he says he couldn't explain how a hybrid could exist 1,000 years ago. So what does he mean by that? Is he talking about an alien-human hybrid or a human gorilla reptile hybrid? What are we talking about with Maria? What is she? What are these beings, these larger beings, these smaller beings? Are they related to each other? We don't know. They've both got 3 fingers and they're found in the same area, so it makes me think they're somehow related, even though they look very different otherwise, and they're totally different sizes. Are they similar in that they're both hybrids, possibly? Could that be a thing? I don't know, but I'll talk about a little bit of the analysis that was done on the smaller mummies. Again, I'm going to go into more detail about this later. It was a fascinating presentation by these researchers. And hats off to them and Jaime Maussan for getting this information to the public. And I really hope that more researchers and analysts get on board with this outside of South America and Mexico and start talking about this in the West and in the wider world, because this is huge. This could be a game changer, guys. This could be disclosure. So what did we find out about the smaller bodies? Well, among other things, the eggs look like they might actually be eggs, because there was, one debunking idea that was thrown around that they could be stones placed in there to look like eggs. So an analysis was done on them to see if they could be stones and they were actually drilled into. And I kind of hate to see these bodies, chipped away at bit by bit for these tests. I know that has to be done, but it is such a shame. Anyway, so they were able to find that the eggs, or whatever they are, in one of the beings had different densities, which the researcher, my impression was the researcher didn't think that would be expected of a stone. So it appears that they may actually indeed be eggs. So that was really interesting. They also talked about the metal implant in that particular being, and that it had fused to the bone. And the impression I got was that we don't really have the technology to do exactly what that did, even today. But at the very least, if it fused to the bone, indicating that the being was alive when this was done and had a very high technical ability, which didn't seem possible based on what we know from the people at the time. So this was a living being. It wasn't a cobbled together doll made of dead body parts. It was a living being. And that implant, pretty much conclusively proves that. So really, really interesting. And also, of course, the CAT scan, seems to indicate that these were intact beings, not cobbled together dolls or, relics for some ceremonial purpose. So, those are some of the takeaways from the last portion of the hearing, and I'll have a much more detailed analysis later, probably a series of breakdowns on the fascinating information presented at the hearing. But I did want to go over a couple of additional things. This is an interesting video about the beings that talks about how the beings appear to have hollow bones. And this is, from a scan, indicating they are more reptilian or bird-like. The hypothesis from this video is that they are more reptilian. And, that is fascinating. If they were reptilian humanoids of some sort with a high technology, could they have been dinosaurs or could they have been terrestrial beings that evolve naturally on this planet and not necessarily alien? If so, if they were an intelligent humanoid on this planet, what happened to them? Are they crypto-terrestrials? Are they ultra-terrestrials? Are they extraterrestrials? We just don't know. But fascinating nonetheless. Either way, this is a game changer. I mean, this is going to, if this is taken seriously and more widely accepted, this is going to change science and history as we know it. This is just insane. This is insane. And there was some additional stuff. Let's see. Where's Jaime? Where'd Jaime go? Jaime, there we go. At this time, the resolution by the rector and professors of the National University of the ICA of Peru has been made known to the world that the biological evidence from NAZCA presented are non-human beings of unknown origin. That's right. The National University of the ICA of Peru, the rector and the professors are saying definitively that these are non-human beings of unknown origin. And based on what I'm seeing, that's bang on. These are not humans. They were at one point live beings with a high technology level that doesn't seem possible from that period. Are they ETs? Are they some sort of crypto-terrestrial? Again, it's impossible to say at this point. At least for me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And there was one more additional thing. At this time, Congressman Sergio Gutierrez Luna announces FANI reform. I'm not familiar with FANI. I know, right? Reform and announces FANI reform initiatives in that his records will not be classified. This is from Jaime, so I'm assuming that some reports about these beings will be made known to the public. Again, I'm going to go over this a lot more in the days to come. There's a lot to break down here, but I think that this hearing has convinced me conclusively that these were live beings. They were non-human. They were apparently revered or thought well of by the humans at the time, and that we don't know what their origin is. Does that mean they're alien? No, it doesn't. But they're nothing that we know of. So yeah, let me know what you think they are in the comments below. So I talked a bit about some of the results yesterday. So let's go over some of the things that I didn't go over. Well, one researcher examined the eggs. And he is convinced that there is this soft tissue showing a vascular structure going into the eggs, showing that they were real eggs, and that they were genuine reptilian or bird-like eggs kept inside this female specimen, this female body. They weren't stones or anything else. That was one of the debunking ideas that was thrown around, was that they were stones inserted into these bodies to make it look like eggs, as if that made any sense at all. Why would the ancient people of NAZCA do that? That doesn't make any sense. But whatever, that was one of the debunking theories. in this analysis pretty well conclusively proves that no, these were real eggs inside these living beings, performing the way that eggs do inside living beings. So very, very interesting. And there's a lot more about the eggs. For example, in this analysis that was done, a scan showing what looks like a fetus inside this egg. So again, these were genuine eggs. And what is more, we have even more evidence of these eggs and their place and these beings' place in the human culture of the time, because apparently these beings, whatever they were held in some esteem by the people. They preserved their bodies, etc. They may have been mummified by the people. This is an ancient fabric that shows an ancient textile that shows a being. Looks exactly like the NAZCA mummies with 3 fingers, etc. With, in the shape of the head, with an egg inside it, and giving birth to either an egg or a being. I see little arms there, so it could be that the being has hatched in this picture. But yeah, this is apparently an ancient textile that was shown at the hearing that seems to confirm that these were living beings that laid eggs and that the people knew about them and they were integrated into their culture with, whatever that means. Fascinating, fascinating material. So yeah, let's move on from the eggs. The breastplates that were in some of these specimens, and interestingly, the breastplates, the implants, were only found in the females, which is really, really peculiar. So it's not simply because the one female was injured by a cat and the breastplate was put in to reinforce her sternum. Apparently that was just a common thing they did with the females for whatever reason. One theory is it serves some sort of communication feature. Well, one of the main elements of this alloy was osmium, which is a really interesting metal. It's used, among other things, for electrical contacts. It is among the rarest elements in the Earth's crust, making only 50 parts per trillion. It is estimated to be about 0.6 parts per billion in the universe, and is therefore the rarest precious metal. The rarest precious metal in the universe was a component of this implant, and it was not discovered. This metal was not even discovered in our culture until a couple of 100 years ago. But these beings were using it 1,000 years ago. And it is also said to be used in satellites and cell phones. So this is a very rare metal used for high-tech purposes, and these beings were using it. They were technologically sophisticated. Either that or some other being was doing the surgery on them, potentially one of the larger beings. But, that's just speculation. We have no clue. But there is some really interesting information about the metal that seems to indicate that these beings may have an off-world extraterrestrial explanation. So I'm going to play a minute of the video from the presentation. Hopefully I won't get a copyright claim. So fingers crossed, here goes.
Use like technological or any other kind of use of that sort. There's also chloride of silver, and this would speak of that this is really not something terrestrial or human that contains it, because that would cause a very strong intoxication. The silver is not something that has anti-oxidating properties like the titanium titanium. Silver is a metal that when produces chlorides, it produces oxides, and it cannot remain inside the organism from Earth, because it would have from Earth. Also, silver is a very, very powerful electrical conductor, and it has been discovered that it's the best natural conductor that exists.
So there you go. There is evidence right there. I'm not going to say it's conclusive evidence, but it's definitely suggestive evidence that these beings come from somewhere else. What other explanations could there be? Well, they could be terrestrial beings. They could have naturally evolved on this earth, some sort of offshoot of birds or dinosaurs, something like that. Totally possible, all within the realms of, feasibility, I guess. But if so, there's no connecting fossil record, right, that would account for that. Now, of course, there's gaps in our fossil record before, right? There's plenty of gaps, right? But this is a big gap. This is a big gap to go from, unintelligent, birds and reptiles to highly technological beings like this. That's a huge friggin' gap. So is that plausible, or is it more plausible knowing that we know that there are off-world beings, there are ETs in other dimensionals? Is it more plausible that they are one of those? So let me know what you think in the comments below. But this researcher seems convinced this evidence of the metals suggests they come from off-world. Okay, I'll just go over a few tweets that are going around with some additional information. In a remarkable disclosure, the University of Ica, and this was during the hearing, they presented their findings during the hearing, has announced the results of a 4-year study into the NAZCA mummies, declaring the specimens to be authentic, non-human, and previously unknown to science. This conclusion, backed by 11 scientists and doctors associated with the institution, challenges conventional understanding and prompts a re-evaluation of history as we know it. Notably, skepticism has been met with the response that only those who have not examined the mummies in person have deemed them fabricated, while those who have studied them up close support their authenticity. The University of Ica's accreditation by SUNIDU, the highest standard in Peru for educational institutions, adds a layer of credibility to their findings. As the academic community awaits the publication of detailed findings on the university's official website, this announcement stirs both excitement and controversy. The claim that these mummies are non-human entities unknown to science could have significant implications for various fields, from anthropology to exobiology. However, such extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One of the scientists said during the hearing that indeed extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and they think they have met that threshold. They think they have supplied extraordinary evidence. And based on what I'm saying, he's not wrong. The presenter from the university also said the university was opening up these specimens to international study and inviting anybody with the right qualifications and abilities to come and study these beings. And I hope scientists from around the world take up that call, that have the courage to get over the stigma of studying these bodies and do so in a robust fashion, so these results can be more widely accepted. Because as long as they're only studied by Mexicans and South Americans, there is I hate to say it, but a racist tendency toward not accepting their results in the way that a Western scientist, for example, would be more accepted. And I think that's very unfortunate. And but it is what it is. And so we do need, for an international scientist, for the international science community to investigate and study these things in a robust and sincere fashion, to get to the bottom of the truth of what these beings are, so that that truth can become more widely accepted by the world. Because I think only when that happens, when will we have real disclosure. And they may be able to find things that the scientists that have studied it so far haven't been able to find. More evidence, for example, that they are off-world. If they are off-world, for example, where are their ships? Where is their technology? Where are their gizmos? I want some gizmos, guys. I don't know about you. And this is another really interesting thing presented at the hearing. According to Theory Haman, I may be mispronouncing that, there could be hundreds of more bodies to be discovered around the NAZCA region. And some of them may look different from the ones that have been shown so far. There does seem to be a little variety in what we are able to see here. So Jaime says there is scientific evidence that a body belongs to a hybrid being whose DNA corresponds to two different types of monkeys, to humans and also to an unidentified genetic component. And that is really interesting as well, the idea that these could be hybrids. So is that what they are? Are they, created beings created by, ETs? Is that what we're looking at here? There is evidence to suggest that Bigfoot, for example, could be a hybrid species. David Paulides, the missing 411 researcher, submitted some DNA Bigfoot to a crime lab, and half of that DNA was human. The other half was unknown, suggesting that Bigfoot is a hybrid species created by ETs. Could the NAZCA mummies be something similar to that? I guess time will tell, right? Time will tell. And what does Mike Colangelo say? Mexico's Congress heard from researchers on Tuesday who declared authentic a set of three-fingered Peruvian mummies recently presented as potential evidence of non-human life forms, while declining to certify that the remains were extraterrestrial. Although that one researcher did strongly suggest that they were. But again, I'm not definitively saying they're ET. I think it's more likely that they're hybrids of some sort, but yeah, we just don't know. We just don't know. Anthropologist Roger Zuniga of San Luis Gonzaga National University, and I'm sorry I'm butchering these names, in Ica, Peru, said researchers had studied 5 similar specimens over 4 years. They're real, he told Reuters on the sidelines of the session. There was absolutely no human intervention in the physical and biological formation of these beings. Yes, he also said he didn't know the origins. And he presented a letter signed by 11 researchers from the university declaring the same. The letter made clear, however, they were not implying the bodies were extraterrestrial. And yeah, we need to know what these beings are and where they came from. And there's actually an article in ABC News, believe it or not. Mainstream media is actually starting to pick this up. ETs return to Mexico Congress as case for non-human beings pressed. The lower chamber of Mexico's Congress once again turned to spectacle Tuesday, devoting hours of its time to a controversial character who pressed the case for non-human beings he said were found in Peru. Well, of course, it wasn't Jaime pressing this case. He was simply presenting it. It was the researchers who were, declaring this information, right? So a little bit of a spin there, but it's ABC. What you going to do? And I'll let you read the article at your leisure, but I'll link to it in the description below. But as you can see, at least mainstream news is covering this story, spin or no spin. So, but yeah, the evidence is very persuasive and very compelling that these are authentic, anomalous beings of some sort. Again, we don't have conclusive evidence one way or the other what they are or where they came from. But I want to know, don't you? We need mainstream Western science to get on board with this and study this stuff in a vigorous way to determine what these beings are and to find out everything we can about them. Because, yeah, like I say, This is disclosure, guys. This could be disclosure if scientists have the guts to study it. So I hope they do. I hope they take up the call, because this is huge, guys. This is game changing. This is going to rock the world if people have the guts to study it. So yeah, let's hope that happens, guys. But I am no longer on the fence about these bodies. I believe they are genuinely anomalous. I don't know what that means, but like I say, I want to know. Do you want to know? But we now have, a new medical exam, a CT scan that shows these are intact skeletons. They are not cobbled together pieces. We have some DNA results that suggest that at least one of them is human, which is hard to believe. So is that contamination? What is that? We don't know. But Jaime is on the case. Neil deGrasse Tyson has responded, interestingly, and there's some additional information. So yeah, let's just dive in. Here's this is from Jaime Maussan. This is really interesting. I wish I could read the letter, but I don't have a translation. But he says the translation of his tweet is: the Chamber of Deputies through I don't know what that word is, has carefully requested from the National Autonomous University of Mexico scientific peer review of the biological evidence of possible non-human intelligence presented at the FANA hearing. So there you go. The Chamber of Deputies, I'm not familiar with that body, is requesting additional analysis of these bodies. Not just any investigation, but a scientific peer review. So I can't wait to see what they find. That's exactly what we need, is more science and more analysis from credible people of these really intriguing bodies, whatever they ultimately turn out to be. At first, I was leaning very much toward the debunk. It looked like a pretty solid debunk. But that CT scan really abolished that debunk in my mind, if indeed they were being honest about the results of that CT scan. And the director of the hospital himself was present during that scan, so I have to assume that it was a legit scan. We definitely need more eyes on this and more science on it, but as of now, I'm thinking those are intact specimens, not cobbled together hoaxes or dolls made for some ritualistic purpose 1,000 years ago. That's not to say there aren't such dolls and such totems. And let's go over this really intriguing post from Open Minded Approach. The ancient Dogu figurines from Japan are similar to the NAZCA mummies from Peru. They are also portrayed with 3 fingers. Too many coincidences. Let's check that out. What in the world? I mean, that is startlingly similar to the mummies, the alien bodies from Peru, whatever they are, alien, human, hybrids, whatever they are, that is shockingly similar. So have these beings been seen, for many, many years all across the world? And, maybe there have been figurines based on them. I would love more information about that. But I am, very intrigued by these Dogu figurines. What do you think, guys? Are these legit beings here, and they've been visiting people all over the world for, thousands or tens of thousands of years, and people have made, figurines based on them? I mean, that is a shocking similarity right there. It really is. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson has been compelled to comment on these bodies. Let's hear what he has to say.
Well, first of all, I like what they did in Mexico. They had what they claimed are alien bodies, and they brought it out in front of their Congress. That's better than leaving them in a locked box and saying you and no one else can get to see them. So that's a start. But in science, a new truth, an objective truth, is only established when multiple labs can analyze whatever your claim is. When we brought rocks back from the moon, we distributed them to all the labs of the world. So everybody participated in that discovery. So here, bring out samples to others and let other people, skeptical people in other labs, test this. They'll either verify it or falsify it, and then we move on.
What was your reaction when you saw the images?
I was surprised because if they're from another planet, why do they look so human? They have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, shoulders, hips, femur, a rib. Why? Most life on Earth shares DNA in common with us. It looks nothing like us. So how could it somebody? So that was my first thought. Second, any corpses or mummified remains, there is no bone in your nose. It's an open hole into your skull. These aliens have intact noses, okay? If indeed that is their nose, okay? I don't know for sure.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. They've got noses. That is interesting. I had never thought about that before. What do you guys think? Is that significant that these remains have noses? But at least he is not dismissing these beings outright, which may in fact be suspicious since he's such a huge debunker. You know, he is saying that they need more analysis and that it was the right thing to do to bring these things forward to get more eyes on. And, you know, he may be saying that because it has kind of made a mockery of the whole Mexican UFO hearing and kind of derailed any positive press it would have gotten. And he may like that, but at the same time, maybe he's being genuine and saying, hey, if you've got evidence of alien beings, bring it out and let us study it. And I support that. For once, I am in agreement with Neil deGrasse Tyson. One of the most intriguing things about the bodies is the weird powder that is coating these bodies. Well, there has actually been some analysis of this, and I'm going to play it for you. It's not in English, so I'm going to minimize my head so that you can read the subtitles.
Pies, pero ahora si yo les muestro a ustedes este conjunto, esto parece un muñeco, pero no es un muñeco. Esta es la momia Luisa, con sus implantes, sus huevos en diferentes posiciones, hasta de espaldas. Las momias, los cuerpos, cuando están tan desecados y no tienen agua en su organismo, el TAC, igual que la resonancia magnética, le cuesta definir lo que son las aristas, todo lo que son las uniones, los cartílagos, las rótulas, le cuesta definir. Pero a medida que va teniendo ese tipo de densidad, digamos, de agua, de tendones, de nervios, de músculos, pues lo descubre mejor. Entonces, demasiado bien están conservadas. Una de las cosas que descubrió el equipo ruso de Konstantin Korotkov es que las muestras que obtuvieron de la momia María, por ejemplo, tenían una sustancia oleosa de un olor muy fuerte y luego tenían encima el polvo de diatomea. Y luego, a más, cloruro de cadmio. Y el cloruro de cadmio es un potente veneno que se utiliza incluso para las tinciones, las galvanoplastias, pero también es un gran fungicida, igual que la diatomea. Pero ¿a que no sabían ustedes que el cloruro de cadmio no existe en la Tierra? Como tal no existe, se tiene que fabricar. Y se tiene que fabricar de manera muy sofisticada, que hace 1000 años era imposible, con ácido clorhídrico. Entonces, cuidado porque estamos empezando a sumar cosas como las que está comentando el señor Zúñiga, Enrico también aquí con nosotros, y tenemos la cuestión de los implantes, que me gustaría ahondar un poquito en ello, preguntarle a usted, señor Zúñiga, no quiero que se nos escape así por las buenas, sobre la cuestión de los implantes. Tenemos el de Josefina y el de Luisa, aquí los puede ver, no sé si ha tenido la oportunidad de ver esta comparativa.
Sí, sí, claro, el corte que se hizo del implante del pecho de Luisa, eso lo visualizamos en el mismo laboratorio de tomografía. El radiólogo hizo el corte, pudimos ver, como verán ustedes, no es un metal compacto, sino hay una cavidad interna, ¿no? En todo el cuerpo.
So there you go. These beings, whatever they are, if they were dolls or something like that, if they were created artifacts, it would have been very difficult, according to these people, to have created them 1,000 years ago, because they just didn't have the ability to do that. The peoples of the time that we know of, at least, did not have those abilities. Now, of course, we are finding all the time ancient peoples that had abilities that we don't think that they should have had. And so maybe this is one more example of that. It is entirely possible. But again, that CT scan was pretty impressive. But whatever the case, it looks like more analysis is coming per Jaime Maussan, and there's even been talk of Avi Loeb getting in on this action and studying these specimens. I would love that. If somebody like Avi Loeb, with his respectability and his mainstream cred, could verify these are intact beings of some sort, that would go a long way to furthering this discussion in the public consciousness. Now he may find out that they are simply humans with mutations, which is entirely possible. I think Gary Nolan reached the same conclusion about a different set of ancient remains, those little mummies, even littler than these guys. But at the same time, these things have eggs. They have eggs. That is not something that humans have. Not like this. I would love some investigation or study done on these eggs. Now, maybe they're just so fossilized you can't tell anything from them, but that definitely seems like an intriguing place to start studying if there is something that can be studied from those eggs, because if there's a little alien embryo in there, or a hybrid or something in there, that would be a game changer for this conversation. But to wrap it up, there's going to be new analysis done on these beings that's going to be peer-reviewed, which is very exciting. And I, will keep my eyes on this story. If you see something about it before I do, please let me know. And let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Do you still think it's a doll or a relic from 1,000 years ago, or a hoax cooked up by Jaime Maussan and the other guys, or something like that? Or are you persuaded that it may be something more anomalous? Now, I'm still on the fence about it. I don't want to say that I believe wholeheartedly that these are aliens or non-humans, but I do find the evidence very compelling that they may, in fact, be genuinely anomalous in some sense. Okay, this is from a news segment by Telemundo. And it's so good, and it's got such good information in it. It does such good coverage of the debate over the mummies that I'm going to possibly play the whole thing. Let's see.
Peruvian and foreign investigators. The Peruvian city police.
Son falsas.
Tremendous controversy broke out in Peru after the Ministry of Culture announced that the so-called extraterrestrial mummies are fake, calling Peruvian and foreign researchers who said their origin was from another world as clowns. It has the details, including the reaction of the Mexican researcher, Jaime Maussan. In simple terms, it is a fraud. Flavio Estrada, a forensic archaeologist summoned by the Ministry of Culture, said that these small mummies seized at customs 3 months ago when they were trying to leave for Mexico, where similar ones had been presented in Congress, are nothing more than dolls armed with animal bones and glue.
They are not extraterrestrials. They are not intraterrestrials. They are not a new species. They are not hybrids. They are none of those things that this group of scientific papers say that for 6 years have been presenting these elements, dispersing them, presenting them in the Mexican Congress.
Joyce Mantilla, one of the defenders of the so-called NAZCA mummies, responded.
These dolls are not the same as what is at the University of Ica, nor what was presented in Mexico. What they have gone out to do is a farce, trying to confuse public opinion. The Ministry of Defense of the Republic, bodies, real studies, studied by more than 40 professionals from different parts of the world, and experts ranging from biologists, geneticists, forensic experts.
Mantilla accuses the Ministry of Culture of passing off these crafts as part of the same group of pterodactyl mummies found in 2017 between the Palpa and Nazca Desert in southern Peru. When he said it, he received the backlash.
You've been lying for 6 years. You have spent your time being Maussan's clown. These are dolls. They are armed dolls. As much as those who are in ICA, like the falsehood of the hybrids with 3 fingers, the big doll, that is false. The only one who believes that story is you, and you are a failure.
Jaime Maussan, a Mexican researcher mentioned in the controversy, also responded.
In reality, they are the ones who are committing the fraud. The bodies that are at the University of Ica are legitimate. And now the Ministry of Culture, in such a light way, wants to destroy an investigation, a case, by presenting it in this way.
The researchers of the so-called NAZCA mummies are preparing an important revelation at the end of the month that will not go down well with the Peruvian Ministry of Culture. In addition, they will announce a discovery that will surprise many. In Lima, Liliana Choi, Telemundo. Thank you, Liliana. Journalist Jamie Maussan said that the NAZCA mummies that he brought to the Mexican Congress are the most important discovery in history, and that the Peruvian Ministry of Culture does not want to accept that extraterrestrials have been visiting us for thousands of years.
Nos visitan desde hace miles de años.
All right, got an exciting discovery at the end of the month. I'm really curious to see what that is. We know that Peru is holding its own hearing, so what is going to come out of that? I can't wait to find out. But to stick with the topic of the Ministry of Culture of Peru running this smear campaign, this disinformation campaign, showing these obvious dolls and trying to pass them off as the NAZCA mummies, well, apparently the guy who they seized those dolls from never claimed they were the NAZCA mummies. They claimed they were dolls. He said they were dolls. And now he's saying, give me my dolls back. Per Gonzalo Chavez, last night in Peru, a significant development occurred regarding the dolls presented at an event. The creator of these dolls, artist Manuel Cazares, has previously informed the ministry that the items were indeed dolls and had requested their return prior to the event. Despite this, his request was ignored. This incident appears to be part of a larger disinformation campaign that has gained international attention. What the Ministry of Culture does not tell is that those bodies that I analyze were dolls created by Manuel Cazares. He himself told the ministry to return his dolls because it was a request that had been requested of him, and the ministry did not do so. So they knew these were dolls. They knew that the owners said they were dolls, and yet they went ahead and presented them as the NAZCA mummies in an effort to debunk the NAZCA mummies. And that's just such obvious disinformation. It's disheartening to see that some people are actually falling for it. So yeah, don't fall for that. That is just another hatchet job by, I don't know if it's the control group exactly, although it's very possible that the control group could have some sway in Peru. Entirely possible that the Ministry of Culture is in the pocket of the control group. The Ministry of Culture could also be doing this for religious reasons, or just because they are, married to the mainstream scientific community. Whatever the case may be, they are clearly trying to discredit the NAZCA mummies in a very obvious and blatant way. But what are the NAZCA mummies? What were those beings? Just who are those guys? Are they still around? Where do they come from? Well, per Gonzalo Chavez, in Peru, the Archaeology Institute that's finding the bodies states that he is being told by local indigenous tribes in the Andes that they are creatures that come from underground in the mountains. So, the locals have been interacting with these beings for thousands of years. They're in the textiles and the artwork of the peoples of the time, 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And they may have some ongoing interactions with the beings. At least it appears they have folklore and mythology around these beings, indicating that they are still around and they're underground and in the mountains. So, it's totally possible if these things were around 1,000 and 2,000 years ago, that they are still around. That would definitely settle the debate if they stepped out of the shadows. And this is interesting. This is from J. Alberto, who may or may not be an official in the Mexican government. Says, this is important. The government of Peru, through its transparency portal, has already confirmed that it has not studied the biological evidence investigated by the University of Ica and presented in the Congress of Mexico. So they were studying dolls. They were not studying the actual NAZCA mummies. And the government of Peru, through its transparency portal, is confirming that. So amazing stuff. It's, I hope people aren't falling for the disinformation. And, we need to get more people studying the NAZCA mummies. And that's not going to happen if people are falling for the BS. So yeah, we need more labs. We need better labs. We need the best minds and the best equipment that is available to us to study these amazing specimens and finally get some answers about what exactly they are. Meanwhile, we are being continually teased about the new NAZCA mummy that is going to be revealed. I think it is going to be more about this guy, this gray type alien. Or hybrid being, whatever it is. I mean, it looks so much like a gray alien, doesn't it? It really does. It really does. And, you know, the little guys, you know, have a lot of features in common with the grays as well. Their joints don't articulate very well, and also they might absorb nutrition through their skin. They have tiny little mouths, so either they have a liquid diet, which is totally possible, or they absorb some sort of fluid through their skin, which apparently, according to various experiencers, is how grays absorb nutrition. So, yeah, so there's a lot in common with the grays, with the little guys, but with this fella right here, man, I mean, doesn't that look like a gray? Doesn't that look like a gray? I mean, it really does. I mean, not that I've ever seen one, or if I did, they wiped it from my mind. But, I mean, that looks so much like our conception of what a gray alien looks like. I mean, look at that. Isn't that shocking? Isn't that shocking? So we are going to get more details about this guy coming up very shortly. You know, they showed a little bit about him or her or it at the second Mexican UFO hearing. But apparently we're going to get a lot more, so stay tuned, stay tuned. I am really pumped to get more information about this really intriguing specimen from NAZCA. Meanwhile, check this out. The fetus of a non-human shown by Jose Mantilla during his interview with RDR News deserves more attention. A baby non-human. This is a scan of one of the NAZCA mummies, one of the ones that have a fetus inside them. And here is what that fetus looks like. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it looks like a little dragon, doesn't it? But obviously we don't know what stage of development it is. It would probably look more like the mother than like a dragon. But amazing stuff. I can't wait for more science to be brought to bear on the NAZCA mummies. And we need really top-notch scientists on this stuff. And but yeah, it looks like we're going to get a lot more about the NAZCA mummies in the very near future. So I really can't wait. Speaking of the NAZCA mummies, check this out. We have new images of a NAZCA mummy. Check this out. It's kind of a hybrid-looking thing. You know, obviously a tridactyl. Non-human facial features in tridactyl mummies from NAZCA Peru. Summary: new pieces found at the site of the tridactyl mummies of NAZCA Peru indescribed. These were released between 2020 and 2021, including loose heads and recently complete bodies under study. They exhibit various facial features across species, such as oblique eyelids, nose, reminiscence, flat faces, heads of different shapes, and observable eyelashes. The implications of these new discoveries are significant, and they must be accredited with relevant scientific studies. That's wild. The NAZCA mummies are so cool, guys. The NAZCA mummies are so cool. That's right, we've got DNA to go over from a few different analyses of the genetics of these amazing beings. Okay, to start with, we'll go over this really intriguing report from the Alien Project. And they have this really, detailed scientific analysis of the beings. I think in this particular analysis, they were looking at Maria, the human-sized being, and also one of the hands of the tridactyl giants, the big guys with the hands. You know those guys. Where are those hands? Where are those hands? Yeah, those guys. So now in this one, I was actually able to get my wife to look over this. My wife is a molecular biologist, a PhD, a scientist. Actually, her title is chief scientist at the tech company that she works at. And she's done, genetic, modifications before. She knows what she's talking about with the genes. So I asked her to look over this, and she surprised me by actually looking it over. I can't tell you how many things I've sent her over the years that, she doesn't really look over. She has very little interest in the UFOs, unfortunately. But she's been intrigued enough by the NAZCA mummies to take a look at this. And her take on it is that this report is genuine, or whoever wrote it is an actual PhD, somebody with a background in medicine or science, and this seems legit. She really wants more information. She wants to see the raw data. Got to have more data, but that's totally understandable in this context, or any context really. Anyway, so there is a way to contact people to get the raw data, to do further analysis, and to really do a deep dive into the genes of these beings. I don't think she's quite motivated enough to look at the raw data, but she might be. So we'll see. We also have a different report from somebody on Reddit that did their own independent review, and it's really good. It's really good. So we'll go over both of the, and they studied also one of the small beings. These guys. Actually, they studied the one that didn't have a head, but the same type of being. So let's go over it. Okay. Sequencing analysis, a few words maybe for non-technical audience. I'm not going to read any of that, sorry. But you can read this at your leisure, and I will link to it below. Maria, general summary. Number of bases and reads, and it gets all the technical stuff. Percentage of reads mapped to human genome, 33. Interesting. Percentage of reads mapped to bacterial and other genome, 18. Percentage of total reads unmapped or unclassified, 47. So they're getting 1/3 roughly human. I mean, almost exactly 1/3 human, and others unknown. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, and we'll get into that. But there you can go, all the various reads and the measurements and all that kind of stuff for Maria. And we will get into some other stuff. Now here you can go through the more detailed stuff. That's all the bacteria they found. And here's for the big hand. And this was really interesting. Reads aligned to human genome. Percentage of reads mapped to human genome, less than 1%. So that's interesting. But it gets weirder. It gets weirder, and there is a little conflicting information. So we'll go over all that. It's a little dry, but it's exciting. So bear with me. There's all that stuff. And there's comparing it to other animals, monkeys and dogs and cats and horses and baboons. As you can see, basically 0% alignment with any of those animals. Okay, so let me go back over here. Trying to do this without any cutting. Okay, there we go. There is one of the snapshots. As you can see, we have 30% human, and 90% metazoa, and we'll go over what all these mean. And I want to say that is for the big hand. That's what the pictures are of. Okay. So we go back to here we go. Here's the identified reads and the unidentified reads, all the stuff. And this is like the critical part right here. So what is that? What is that being? 30% human on this analysis. 97% it's cellular. It's metazoa. I want to say that means it's got multiple cells. And what are all these words mean? Katarhini means it's the sister group of the monkeys. So it's some sort of monkey or ape. That's them taking the samples. And let's see. So it's 82% hominoidea. And if you don't know what hominoidea is, neither did I. I mean, you can probably figure it out from the spelling more or less. But yeah, hominid, ape, right? So then it's 68% hominae, which is great apes. Getting closer. 68, yeah. There's homidae, and then there's hominae. And hominae is African apes, specifically. So there you go. They're really narrowing it down, but only 30% human in this sample. So some sort of hominid with a little modern human in it. This is from NAZCA Mummies. Dissection of one of the large hands. Samples were sent to 3 labs responsible for the DNA analyses. 2 samples for each lab. The DNA sequenced ancient 003 is now available online at the National Library of Medicine database. And that is where we go, National Library of Medicine. That's what I was just reading from. So others have taken up the challenge of analyzing this DNA. And that's really interesting. So we're going to go over to the Reddit post. And it's long. There's a lot of it. I'm analyzing the alien mummy DNA, so you don't have to. Well, thank you, Verbal Cant. I appreciate that. And this is actually the second post. The other was their updates on their ongoing analyses, and they looked at these beings. We've completed the alignment of the reads, etc. So that this is the updates. Giving us the dates and how their analyses are progressing. Here are their results. Here's our paper. Mummy's the word. Okay, mummy's the word. A genomic look at Peruvian mummies. Things we didn't find. Evidence of alien origin. Evidence that the mummies are human. Evidence of genetic engineering. Evidence of faked samples. Things we did find. 3 high-throughput next-generation sequencing sample run files showing high levels of contamination and degradation completely consistent with ancient DNA extracted over lying for hundreds or thousands of years in a cave. Reasonable statistical evidence that the sample run files were not computationally faked. Samples largely dominated by prokaryotic DNA, bacteria, and archaea, and unclassified reads. Varying percentages of human-aligned DNA in all samples. Interesting. Varying percentages of human-aligned DNA in all samples. A surprising and perplexing result for ancient 003, that is one of the large hands, with some very strong alignment to the human genome. It's showing 95%, which is, at odds with that other report that I was just reading from the National Library of Medicine. This is, I guess, the ancient, not ancient aliens, but the Alien Project report. To the mitochondrial DNA most closely related to, in our investigation, to a modern population. Okay, this is where it gets weird, right? Modern population in Myanmar. I'll repeat, the giant 3-fingered hand that could have been a being a 3-meter tall being with 3 fingers and 3 toes, had 95% of alignment with human DNA of Myanmar, not indigenous Peruvian, broader indigenous American or European. So how did somebody get? Yeah, how did a human from Myanmar, on the other side of the world? Well, first of all, how did he become a 3-meter tall being with 3 fingers? And yeah, how did he get over in Peru? I don't know about these guys' results. I don't know who these guys are, but they do a really professional presentation, and you can see how into what detail they go into. My wife hasn't had a chance to go over this yet. Discussion, that's the conclusion. Along with varying alignments with the human genome, we discovered a wide range of ancient microbial life and an unexpected genetic linkage to Myanmar, specifically through mitochondrial DNA haplogroup in the sample. That's the haplogroup in the sample ancient 3. The lack of American subclades in the Asian lineage proposes new questions about the origins of the human DNA in that sample. Was it more likely? What was it the most likely explanation? A simple mishandling of the samples along the chain of custody, or does it enrich the story of human migration? It's a giant being with 3 fingers. I'm guessing contamination, but again, that's completely at odds with what these guys were finding. So they were finding the giant hands to only be 30%. They were finding a large hominid component, over 80% hominid, but of some unknown species, not corresponding to humans. So I'm inclined to think that makes more sense, somewhat, than somebody from Myanmar. The giant 3-fingered being from Myanmar, being human. So, I'm not sure about these guys' results. But it's fascinating. The smaller beings. Let's get into the smaller beings. Let me find it for you. Okay, the samples all showed some alignment with the human genome, with the 2 samples from Victoria showing, and Victoria's the small being, showing less, 10% of the deduplicated ancient 2 reads aligned to the human genome, and 12% of the ancient 4 reads aligned. And I believe both of those are from Victoria, the small being with no head. While ancient 3, the large hand from an unspecified mummy, showed 95% alignment to the human genome. Regarding the question about whether we can confirm that it's part of the dominant genome in the sample, unfortunately we cannot. So anyway, the small mummies, according to this analysis, are showing only 10% of their DNA aligned with human, and they're finding 95% for the big one, which again makes no sense at all. And yeah, but this is interesting from Sarah. Sarah Palin. I'm not going to read that whole. Okay, fascinating. So it sounds like we can take the cobbled remains of human bodies hypothesis and the computationally falsified DNA hypothesis off the table, at least for 2 and 4. That's Victoria, the small mummy. Those aren't human, and they don't match anything in the system, and these samples are consistent with ancient mummy contamination. 3 can't be ruled out as human, but is more bizarre in that its DNA didn't match that of ancient Peruvians, but people from a completely different region of the world. Unless a 3-fingered person from Southeast Asia made the journey to Peru, then lost their hand there, or a mummy from that region was modified and transferred to Peru. That whole situation makes very little sense. I agree. It makes no sense at all. It also goes against the official study that shows, again, in the giant hand, only 30% human, but a whole lot of hominid for some reason. So could this be a genetically engineered hominid? I don't know. The Redditor that posted that study didn't see any signs of genetic engineering, which, you know, so if that's possible to detect, and apparently it is, then I don't know how you could have arrived at a giant three-fingered being. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it all, but it looks like these small guys are very inhuman, and the larger guys are more human. Anyway, let's get to the news. Let's get to the various updates. The big one is that there is an hour-long documentary on Gaia about the Nazca mummies. And there's a wealth of information in that documentary that I hadn't seen before. Little gaps, information that fills in some gaps for me. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So I'll link to it below. It's free right now on this Twitter channel. So check it out if you have time. Great information. Meanwhile, remember this guy? This is one of the new beings that we've seen. The one that had little wings, and or whatever those are that are sticking out of its back. I mean, it sure looks wing-like. Who knows? Who knows? But check this out. This is from Australia. Is this a similar being? Is that what we're seeing depicted in Australia? Because I've talked before about the pictographs in Australia that seem to depict non-humans. And of course, globally, ancient people seem to have been interacting with beings. Well, were they interacting with that winged being or something like it? Is that what we are seeing in Australia? So not only did we see the smaller Nazca mummies that we're familiar with, but maybe even more exotic specimens. So let me know what you think. Is that the same being, or is it just too close to call? We definitely need more information. We also need more information on the Nazca lines. Now that we know that there were beings interacting with humans in that area, and they were interacting with humans, and humans were very much aware of them and depicting these beings in their art, textiles, etc., we have to take another look at the Nazca lines. What do they mean? Were they some effort by the humans to interact with the beings after they left? Were the beings directing them to do this, to communicate with the mothership that abandoned them? Or, what is the story behind the Nazca lines, and what significance do the Nazca lines play in the greater scheme of things now that we know the ancient peoples of that region were indeed interacting with beings? Here's an X-ray. Here's the pyramid with writing on it. I've shown this before, but here's some closer shots of the writing itself. What is that? What was that human language? Did the ancient Incas leave that writing? I don't know. I don't know. Is this alien language? What is this? What is this? But this isn't the only example of writing that may or may not have come from non-humans. Meanwhile, what about these guys? I've made previous videos talking about how cultures around the world in ancient times seem to have been interacting with beings that may or may not have been similar to the Nazca beings. But what about the Vinca culture? These depictions of these beings, could they be human? Could they be abstract representations of human? I mean, this one right here is holding an infant of some sort. Is that did that come from an egg or not? So I don't know if these are supposed to be abstract representations of human, but they don't look particularly human, do they? And it's interesting that the Vinca culture had some sort of form of proto-writing. Here's talking about some of those symbols. The Vinca symbols or designs among those old European Danube script, because they were along the Danube, they were a set of untranslated symbols found on Neolithic era artifacts from the Vinca culture. Whether this is one of the earliest writing systems or simply symbols of some sort is heavily disputed. They have sometimes been described as an example of pre-writing or proto-writing. Who was this enigmatic civilization that dominated parts of Europe? Where exactly did they come from? What does this writing system actually translate to? The ancient world is never as it seems. Absolutely. So this is one more possible culture that could have been interacting with beings. But what can we learn from ancient writing and possibly human interaction with the beings? Well, let's check out this. This is the easy dub version of a non-English language video.
The Sumerians are considered the oldest civilization. They emerged in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago and are the creators of many inventions and concepts that we still use today. Also from the first vestige of modern writing called cuneiform. The disconcerting thing is that thousands of kilometers away, near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, writing very similar to Sumerian or even older was also found. This is the land of the Tiwanaku, the alleged builders of the enigmatic Puma Punku Archaeological Center. The cuneiform writing is engraved on the inside of a stone vessel. It was found by chance by a farmer and is known as the Great Fountain. This sparked controversy more than 60 years ago because it would imply that the Sumerians were present in front of Titicaca, or, in some way, the Great Fountain was brought to the high plateau.
Okay, I'll let you watch the full video at your leisure, but there you go, check it out. Possibly ancient Sumerian in South America or some similar culture or crossover, or what is that all about? Does that imply something like Atlantis, some seafaring civilization that bridged the gap between distant parts of the world and spread its culture throughout the world? Or are we talking about a more non-human involvement? Since both places, South America and the ancient Sumer, are heavily associated with mythology of non-humans. Speaking of things that shouldn't be in South America, I just wanted to remind you of this guy, or this young lady, possibly, that was found in one of the NAZCA mummy tombs. Definitely doesn't look like something that would have been South American. I don't think. Let me know what you think. This was a totem. This was part of a totem. This is the pole that this head, this bust, was sitting on. I don't know what to think of this amazing artifact, but it definitely, in my mind, does not look in any way Incan. But were the NAZCA beings alien at all? Did they evolve here? They've got scales, they got eggs. Could they have evolved from dinosaurs? Is it something like this? Could they have evolved from some little dinosaur into an intelligent humanoid of some sort that was highly technological, using osmium, etc.? Are the NAZCA beings crypto-terrestrial? I don't know. Some of the DNA seems to indicate they have unknown origin. Would a dinosaur be unknown, or would that be exclusively non-human? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Meanwhile, we've got the Japanese hearing on the 20th coming up very soon. Hopefully we'll get some really good information coming about what the Japanese doctors and scientists have discovered about the NAZCA mummies. I love it. I can't wait. I'm really hoping that the Western world will take these findings very seriously, and that will give mainstream science in the West permission to actually begin studying these so important specimens in earnest. Peru may be taking the NAZCA mummies more seriously, finally. Okay, this was actually sent to me by Nico, so thank you, Nico. I appreciate that. I wouldn't have seen this otherwise. This appears to be the Ministry of Culture in Peru addressing Congress, and I love it. This is huge. And there is a easy dub version of it, and an AI dub version of it. It's it's a little dry. But there's a really interesting, some really interesting comments here by Gonzalo Chavez. So let's go over them. He says, it's intriguing to observe the Peruvian Congress's interest in allocating additional funds for scientific research into the unidentified non-human bodies presented in the Mexican UFO hearings. This initiative reflects a growing curiosity and seriousness in the examination of unexplained phenomenon. So they're actually funding research into the study of these mummies. That's amazing. That's amazing. Moreover, the proposal to establish a museum dedicated to these findings signifies a significant step towards public education and engagement. The potential of this venture as a tourist attraction, coupled with the emphasis on the preservation of these bodies, underscores the importance of this discovery. And absolutely, it could be a huge tourist attraction. If that is the motivating factor for the preservation and study of these bodies, then I'll take it. I'll take it, guys. The global discourse on UFOs is evolving, and it's noteworthy that these developments are occurring independent of mainstream media coverage or advocacy on platforms like UFO Twitter or reporting from major reporters. Sad but true. The recent statements by a congressman regarding the plans for this project highlight the global nature of the UAP mystery. And if you're inclined, I will link to this presentation.
Continuing with our agenda, I remind you, fellow congressmen, that in the reports...
I'm not going to play it. It is kind of dry, but it is really exciting that Peru might be taking these bodies more seriously. Now, we'll see, because there are indications that the Ministry of Culture of Peru may be part of the cover-up. Time will tell how sincere they are about investigating these bodies. But fingers crossed, this is exciting. Gonzalo also has this intriguing tweet. He says the university professors at the University of Ica Gonzaga that own the non-human biologics believe... and I love how biologics is now what we call them, right, after David Grush. That own the non-human biologics believe they are an intelligent Earth-based species, more than likely subterranean, in the intelligent evolution of the reptile. Now, that's all possible, and I've speculated on that too. Could these beings have evolved here on Earth from reptiles? Well, totally possible. However, that is a huge, huge gap in the fossil record. Now we find missing links all the time and new species, so it's not out of the realms of possibility that could happen, especially for, bones as tiny as those would be. How long would those last? How many of them would be found, etc. But still, that's a massive, massive gap in the fossil record. So I tend not to believe that. I believe these are, alien hybrids or created by non-humans. But that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But here's the really intriguing thing that Gonzago says. The professors think that they may have been, evolved here on Earth. They also think they can find living ones if given the funds and allowed to explore the cave systems. Wow, so there could be some scientists exploring caves looking for aliens. Or it could just all be a ploy to get some funding. I don't know. It's early days yet. It's early days. But, I mean, there's going to be, hopefully, some movies based on scientists looking for aliens in caves. Ticket sold right here, guys. Ticket sold. But even better if it is a documentary about scientists actually finding these beings. And here's an interesting segment about what they have to say, what the findings are for the substance coating many of these bodies.
We have found cadmium chloride on the surface of these specimens. Actually, the specimens were obviously covered with cadmium chloride and diatomaceous earth.
As far as I understand, cadmium chloride is not found at all in nature.
It needs to be acidized, extracted, then transformed into a soluble form into cadmium chloride. It also needs to be purified for sure. It is a complicated procedure. We have found cadmium.
So there is a complicated procedure. So if they were evolved reptiles here on Earth, they would have to be highly, highly technological. And again, we would probably see signs of that technology going back through history. Now, maybe that was covered up. Always possible. But again, I lean toward a more, non-Earth-based solution to the mystery. And here's Thierry Jamon talking about information from Mario, the Tomb Raider, who may have found a three-eyed skull. That's pretty cool. I want to see it. Mario. I tend to trust Mario a lot more than I do Paul, the other Tomb Raider. Remember that crazy video I showed you with the, fighting mantis beings and stuff like that? Now, that's an awfully elaborate hoax for a Tomb Raider to do. If that was a hoax and they weren't really fighting mantis people, which, seems unlikely, then that seems to have would have had to have been a funded hoax. Maybe a deliberate piece of disinformation put out by the Ministry of Culture of Peru. Possibly. Just throwing that out there. I don't see any other likely explanation for Paul, the Tomb Raider, if that's who created that video, to have put that out there. Because that throws everything in that video into question, right? Including the pyramid and the crazy handbag. Again, I don't think he would have fabricated that handbag or even that pyramid. Could it have been something the Ministry of Culture of Peru had lying around, and they wanted to include in this disinformation video? So I don't know. It's almost more likely to think that video was legit. But that was a crazy video, guys. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. Tomb Raiders finding living beings in these tombs, or a tomb, where the NAZCA mummies were found, supposedly, and even fighting one of them. Crazy. Again, it's probably fake, but if it was fake, who faked it and why? Because it would have taken some money to put that together. And what would be the intent? What would be the purpose? I don't get it. I don't get that hoax, if that's what it was. Somebody explain that to me. But I tend to trust Mario in his information. So he's the one that's provided most of the bodies, as far as I understand it, to Thierry Jamon, after Thierry had a falling out with Paul because of his dramatic tendencies. And I think that probably means there was some BS in what Paul was doing. Okay, this is subtitled, so I will read it out loud. Is surely within their inhabitants, it is a hypothesis. And another, Stephanie, are you certain there are other uncovered rooms and that the carrion geese? Oh my God. Okay, the translation is so bad. And the presumed site and not elsewhere on one or more sites, not necessarily in the same sector. Then according to what these geese Gaillard told us, in this particular Mario told us that there was one side of the second sarcophagus, 3 doors which are still sealed closed, and to this day they had not dared to open its doors because, he said, they spotted a kind of stone which seems to protrude from the ceiling and which could perhaps be a security system, etc. So they have not yet explored the whole site. Far from it, they tell me they only touched because perhaps barely 10% of this famous site. Did they find these relics on the alleged site? At least that's what he tells me. And I don't see why not. Why we should question there. Especially since Mario explained to me that they have been coming for 10 years. Since 2006, he had already met it's a sacred place of the Incas on the coast inside which he had found a hand of 3 must not put 51 species of humanoid skull head with 3 eyes. This material has unfortunately been sold 10 years ago. But yeah, so apparently some private collector has a 3-eyed skull that may in fact be a genuine non-human skull. So, I mean, it'd be lovely if the private collector, at the very least, would allow scientists to study it and would release some pictures and videos of this amazing artifact to determine if it is legitimate or not. Because, yeah, three-eyed skull, guys, it's pretty juicy. That's pretty juicy. I wonder what it sold for. Do you think that's a legit skull or not? I don't know, but it's pretty cool. In other news, possibly related to the NAZCA mummies, a weird stone cube has been found in Peru with some very interesting writing on it. Check this out, guys. Look at that crazy writing on this crazy stone. We don't know what the writing is. It resembles some writing from Puma Punka. I mean, that closely resembles that, right? So, you know, what does it mean? What is the purpose of this cube? We don't know. I think it was found in Ambo. It also vaguely resembles the writing of Sumeria. So let me know what you think about this crazy cube that was found in that region. And Wanto Uka Cave, Ambo, where the clay cube with unknown writing was supposedly discovered. That's a good map. That's the entrance. And that's the extant bats. So a map of one of these caves. Fascinating, guys. I would love to explore one of these caves. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Oh, and here's a good reminder. There are ritual dolls. You know, a lot of people like to debunk the mummies as ritual dolls cobbled together from body parts. Well, there are ritual dolls, and that's what they look like. This fella here. It looks to me like that's a representation of the real thing, this fella right here. So, but, you know, let me know what you think. Meanwhile, Neil deGrasse Tyson seems to be slowly, possibly coming around to the reality of the NAZCA beings.
Is there evidence that there are aliens?
No, not evidence that would convince a skeptical scientist. No.
Okay.
No, there are people holding their hand up, swearing to tell the truth in Congress.
Yes.
That's not how we establish objective truths in science. We don't walk into a scientific conference and say, I swear this is true, but give me a book I can swear on. That's not how we do this. You bring out the evidence. But they did this in Mexico. They put the aliens on display in Congress. If we have aliens, that's what they should do if they're trying to say we've got them in a locked box. Now, in Mexico, the next step is you take tissue samples and send it to other labs.
Yeah.
It's not just because one person and one lab says something is true. That's not what establishes the moving frontier of the objective truths of science. So, any scientist who looks at the universe, they say,
yeah, okay, so there you go. It's an unfortunate screen grab of Neil, but he seems to be holding the Mexican UFO hearing up as an example of what the U.S. should do. He's not deriding it, he's not eye-rolling it, he's not sneering at it. He's saying that's a great example, and now we need more research done on these beings. I'm encouraged by this interview, but let me know what you think in the comments below. This apparently did come out of the Japanese hearing. I think that is what I have heard. I have not seen that confirmed. You know, they didn't, I mean, there's no other information about them discussing the mummies, so I don't know how they would have slipped that in, but that is what I have heard, that this scan came from the Japanese UFO hearing or the researchers that were part of it. So that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I got to say that's pretty cool. Yeah, neat. Love it. Love it. So yeah, the stuff is going on, and we are going to get some answers on these most amazing specimens, and that may in fact constitute UFO disclosure. Okay, a lot of this information is coming from Thierry Dumont, as close as I can get to pronouncing his name. He's French, and this is an interview, of course, conducted in French, but thanks to the awesome work of Nicholas, a viewer who sent me a translation of, or at least a translated breakdown, or a breakdown, because he speaks French, of this amazing interview. Now we're able, or I am able, to share with you the contents of the interview. And he's got some amazing information. So hat tip to Nicholas. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here's Thierry, and if you don't know, Thierry is the foremost researcher, the first guy that was able to get his hands on the Nazca mummies from the Tomb Raiders, specifically, most prominently Mario. So, what does he say in this amazing interview? Well, check this out. At 7 minutes in, Thierry talks about Artemis, a mummy we haven't seen yet. She has 7 body implants and 4 eggs. Thierry mentioned they found some of the mummies with clothes on. It confirms the video about the Citadel, the alien Citadel. That's what we're calling it, or I'm calling it. I love calling it the alien Citadel, and I've shared pictures with you before with the mummy with the clothes on, the armor, the breastplate. Thierry also mentions there are several sites. He only confirms these creatures used technologies. Okay. Mario, the Tomb Raider, was convicted in 2021 to 4 suspended years and 30,000 souls, about $8,000 US. Thierry is trying to convince him not to sell the artifacts and mummies to pay for his conviction. And, that's going to be a challenge. Mario is going to want to pay that off. Then he's going to need to pay that off, and he's got a source of income with those mummies, so why not sell them to a private collector, right? Well, I really hope he resists the temptation, that Thierry is able to talk him out of that or help him find a way to pay for that in some other way. Thierry talks about a 30 centimeter, 19 minutes in, he talks about a 30 centimeters long 3-fingered hand with an implant. And I've shown you pictures of that before, the giant hand, the giant 3-fingered hand. Actually, there's 3 of them with that gold disc in the hand. Very intriguing, very fascinating. They also did a radiography. Universities were studying it at the time. He said some doctors in Cusco didn't detect any fabrication. As you can see, the bones look real, unlike what people said. 27 minutes in, he talks about the osmium found in Luisa's breastplate. They found 6 symmetrical points of osmium in her plate. He basically says that Luisa could not have been faked by those who found the mummies, because they would have made a lot more money by selling the osmium than by selling the mummies themselves. Yeah, osmium, if you don't know, was only discovered a couple of 100 years ago, but it is found in these implants from 8,000 years ago. And it is the rarest precious metal in the universe, according to scientists, and is used in satellites and cell phones in small amounts. So, it's extremely valuable. And he says that 1 gram of osmium costs about 2,000 USD. Nicholas just checked, and prices vary quite a bit, from 400 to 2,000 depending on the source. For comparison, 1 gram of gold costs between 40 and 80 USD. Wow! So it's so much more valuable than gold. That's amazing. It is the most expensive metal on Earth, osmium. Why would poor fakers use osmium? They wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. Articulation doctors from the University of Ica confirmed that the hands of Josefina and Maria, the ape hybrid, that's the big one, who has more ape-like features, articulation doctors confirmed they are real creatures. They are not cobbled together dolls. Close-ups of Oita and Maria. And let's see if I can find that close-up. We've all seen Maria. Let's see. There's some pictures from the site. There's some close-ups. There you go. There's the close-ups. And I guess that must be the one that we haven't really talked about before, with this really interesting shaped head. I would play it for you, but it's in French. Okay, moving on. No researcher concluded the mummies are extraterrestrial. Thierry talks about the Piwais, small creatures that used to live among the Incas. And that seems to be borne out by their artwork and their textiles, indeed from artwork from around the world, as I've shared with you. Multiple people around the world seem to be encountering these beings, and they may even have lived amongst the peoples. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. The University of San Luis Gonzaga is working in collaboration with American universities. Well, that's encouraging. And the video is a year old, so I don't know what has become of that research in these American universities. I haven't seen anything like that. Thierry talks about the petroglyphs of a tridactyl creature Nicholas shared with me before. And I think, yeah, we've gone over the petroglyphs, I believe. He talks about the iconography between south of Lima and the north of Chile that represents tridactyl reptilian creatures in ceramics, paintings, and fabrics. Apparently, they were very common. Interestingly, he also mentions that there are tridactyl creatures in the fabrics made by the people of the Paracas region. Yeah, this is the NAZCA and Paracas region of Peru. That's where the humans born with the elongated skulls used to live. They also had a much bigger cranial volume and eye orbits. They were clearly not Homo sapiens sapiens. Yeah. Those elongated skulls, and I've shared at least one of those with you before. I think maybe two of those. Those elongated skull beings, you're not going to get that with cranial binding. Yeah, you don't get that with cranial binding. So what are they? Are they hybrids? Are they aliens? We don't know. We don't know. But they're not strictly human. Maria is 1,800 years old. The big one. The big one is 1,800 years old. Wuita, Victoria date back, and in Victoria date back to 1,000 years ago. The big hand is 6,000 years old, older than the Egyptian mummies, Nicholas says. Wow, can you imagine that? That giant alien hand with the 3 fingers and the gold disc is 6,000 years old. That's insane. So does that mean there were waves of these beings of different sizes and aspects and whatever? First maybe the giants and then later the little ones. Fascinating. And of course we have the 3 giant hands, and I've shared those with you before. Again, a video from Thierry. The site is in the Malpaso area, which means cursed place in English. It's not far from a cemetery. It's surveilled by some locals. Mario is not the only Tomb Raider who monetized the mummies. A local woman told Thierry she saw a 3-meter tall being in the Malpaso area. Wow. So are these giant 3-fingered beings still around? That's crazy. That's crazy. Within 2 kilometers of the site where the mummies were found. She described the creature to Thierry. He filmed the testimony. She works in a travel agency. She doesn't know the Tomb Raiders. 57 minutes in, Thierry says that loads of UFOs are seen in the NAZCA area. Yeah, no big surprise there, right? Wow, wow. I guess maybe they're checking out the NAZCA lines, right? Were the NAZCA lines built during that time period when the mummy beings, whatever they were living amongst the people? Maybe if they left at a certain point, the people made those lines to call them back, or sending them a postcard. Interesting stuff. There is a mountain called Cerro Blanco in the northern part of NAZCA where people see a lot of UFOs. There are videos on YouTube with a cigar-shaped UFO above the mountain. Okay, well, I've got to find that. Nicholas says, holy effing shit. First time I see it, new mummy found in Mexico. It is a different species. And is that the one I just showed you? That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. It was found in September 21. Okay, well, Nicholas says it's the 65-minute mark. That was the one. That was the one. Okay, I just can't count. Guys. 65 minutes, of course, is an hour and 5 minutes. But, I'm working on it. It was found in September 2021 in the state of Guerrero. Man, I can't see that word. In Mexico. Okay, so there are some found in Mexico. Very interesting. It's not just in Peru. They are found in Mexico. Of course, that shouldn't be a surprise since, as we've seen, it's very likely these beings or some similar types of beings were all over the world. It's crazy. It's crazy. It was found in a small sarcophagus inside a mountain. 4 fingers and 4 toes. Very interesting. So a different race or a different, breed of hybrid, different strain of hybrid. Fascinating. Fascinating. 4 fingers, 4 toes, as opposed to the 3 fingers and 3 toes of all the others that we know of so far. Wow. Could be older than the NAZCA mummies. It was x-rayed. It seems like it was a real being. Artifacts and ceramic were found inside the sarcophagus and around it. The artifacts depict communication between people and the 4-fingered creatures. It was sold to Pedro Garcia, a famous ufologist. At the time of the video, he was doing some DNA analysis. Wow, okay, well, pony up with the DNA, Pedro. Where is that? I have not seen that. I haven't seen any other discussion of that 4-fingered, 4-toed being. So I'm going to have to keep my eyes open for it, and if you see it before I do, let me know. Let me know. But yeah, the artifacts depict communication between the people and the 4-fingered creatures. So multiple creatures. And they were, communicating with them apparently just the same way they were with the 3-fingered beings. Very interesting. Thierry answered a question from the chat. Victoria, one of the small mummies, has between 15 and 19% of DNA in common with Homo sapiens. Okay, yeah, so they are hybrid species apparently. Maria, the big one, between 25 and 33% human. Very interesting. So the small ones have less human DNA than the big ones. Chimpanzee, by contrast, has 98 to 99% genes in common with humans. Banana, 45%. So the small beings and Maria have less genetically in common than a banana than to humans. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Nicholas says this strongly suggests that these beings have some alien DNA. Yeah, it sure sounds like it. It sure sounds like it. And again, thank you so much to Nicholas for providing this breakdown. I tried to watch it with the auto-translate on, and the auto-translate was so bad, I just gave up. But I will link to the full video, and you can watch it at your leisure. But isn't this amazing information? We've got the giants are over 6,000 years old, which could explain why we only have the hands. Who knows what has happened to their bodies in 6,000 years. And we have information that there may still be the giants around. So the witness that saw the 3-meter tall being, right? And we have learned that it's not just in Peru, that it goes all the way up to Mexico, and that there are 4-fingered beings and 4-toed beings as well that were in communication with the people. So just amazing, amazing information. How is this not all over mainstream news, guys? How is this not everywhere? I mean, Thierry should be making the rounds on all the major news stations, and, so should all the researchers and scientists who have looked at these beings and presenting their evidence. And this should be in the New York Times. This should be on Fox and CNN. This is UFO disclosure, guys. It is, but only if people see it, right? If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Well, right now it's not making much of a sound, guys. So, help me get the word out. Share this video in Thierry's full video and all the other stuff that's available to us right now from the amazing research that these people are doing. And thank you so much, Thierry, for doing this. If you're anything like me, you are convinced that the NAZCA mummies were indeed genuine beings of some sort. Well, how widespread were those beings? If they were in Peru, were they in other places as well? Well, let's talk about that in a general update on the NAZCA Mummy. So get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, please share on social media, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Oh, and hat tip to Nicholas, who sent me this awesome link. I love it. It is really cool. Okay. So let's go over it, all right? What have we got? We have pictures of, figurines and imagery from, tapestries or whatever that is in Peru, this textile. And it looks like etchings and carvings from around the world showing beings that look an awful lot like the NAZCA mummies. Okay, here we go. In Mexico, we have this little guy. He's got 3 fingers. He's got these, oval-shaped, slanted eyes, just like the mummies seem to. And we've got, in Peru, we've got little figurines that look very similar to that, with the 3 fingers on each finger. Look at that. There's several different depictions of them in Peru, as you would imagine. We know they were in Peru after all. What I find really interesting about the ones in Peru is you can see the headdresses and stuff. Now, is that just artistic license, or were they actually wearing human clothes? Or did this style originate from the beings? That was really interesting. Obviously, the people knew about them and seemed to have held them in high regard. So, were they part of society? Were they even leaders in the culture or the cultures of the time? What are we talking about here? What was the interaction there? In Japan, we have, again, very similar looking beings with the slanted eyes and the 3 fingers. In Cuba, we've got these little guys with the 3 fingers. In Argentina, the same thing, the 3 fingers. So, what are we to make of this? And it looks like he's holding a staff. I'm not sure what that object is. Is he wearing a hat? I can't tell. But yeah, so all over the world showing, depicted in art from their culture, these beings that look remarkably like the NAZCA mummies, like the beings that were mummified in Peru. So what are we to make of this? See my video yesterday. I don't know, if that is accurate or not. That theory or that idea that I floated out there. But definitely there were beings among the cultures of the ancient people, and they had some interaction and some impact. How big was that impact? I would love to know. I would love some answers on this. I hope some remote viewers take up the challenge of these NAZCA mummies and of trying to understand the interaction. And I would like to see teams of remote viewers view each one of these images individually to see what they pick up. Just amazing information. So again, thank you, Nicholas. We have some other stuff. A magnetic clay statue measuring about 25 centimeters found in central Peru. Again, with the 3 fingers, a similar shaped head, right? Kind of as a pot belly. Maybe this is, a pregnant female with the eggs. Hard to say. And we have this really interesting thing right here. It is Maria, who is the large mummy that we're familiar with. There's probably other large mummies, but she's the one that I know the name of. We've seen what she looks like in the fetal position, because that's the position she is currently in. But what would she look like standing up and also juxtaposed against a normal human? Well, let's check that out. We've been hearing the researchers saying she was more ape-like in some ways, and you can really see that very clearly here, I think. Yeah, you can see the thicker chest, the more ape-like arms and legs. The very heavy face. Are we looking at an ape-human hybrid, or also with some non-human and non-terrestrial DNA thrown in? What are we looking at here? I would love to know. Again, I would love to know your thoughts on what Maria is. Is she of the same race as the little guys? Because obviously with the 3 fingers, it makes me think of the same race, but her face and her anatomy is otherwise so different from the petite little NAZCA mummies. So, what is going on here? Who are these beings? Who were these beings? What was their relationship to each other? What was their relationship to the humans of the time? And what impact did they have on the peoples? When we're studying the cultures of these various peoples that seem to have had this interaction, are we looking at mythologies based around these beings in part? When they say they're gods, are they talking about these beings? One of those figures I showed you was a Dogu from Japan. And on Wikipedia, it says, some scholars theorize the Dogu, the figurines, acted as effigies of people that manifested some kind of sympathetic magic. Of course, that's just a theory. Dogu are made of clay and are small, typically 10 to 30 centimeters high. Of course, that could be life size. They are considered by many to be representative of goddesses. Most of them are female. Many have large abdomens associated with pregnancy, suggesting that the Jaman considered them mother goddesses. According to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, these figurines suggest an association with fertility in shamanistic rites. There's a lot of conjecture there, if these are in any way related to the NAZCA mummies or the beings that were mummified in NAZCA. Obviously those don't get pregnant in the way that human females do or mammals do, but they definitely, the females, some of them do have eggs in their belly and I guess can be considered pregnant. Would their belly swell in the way that a human's would? Again, impossible to know. And it's also possible that these figurines have no bearing at all to the NAZCA mummies. But it's also possible they do. Here's a depiction of the ant people that worked with the Hopi, supposedly. Again, I talked about that yesterday. And, are these beings here non-humans? Are those related to the beings in Peru? Maybe the taller ones, maybe like Maria, maybe some other race completely different from those races, because of course I believe there's been multiple races here for a long time and working with us and doing their own thing, maybe heavily involved in humanity, some of them, maybe some of them pursuing entirely different projects or agendas. We just don't know, but we certainly deserve some answers, because there does seem to have been an interaction with humanity, possibly, maybe even likely, a manipulation of humanity for a long time. And a lot of this ties up with the metaphysical stuff. Some of you don't like it when I say that, but that is where the evidence goes. And so it's not just, people in tin cans from another planet. It's nature of reality sort of things. The shape of the cosmos and of the uber reality beyond all of that, and also our own natures and our abilities and our connection to the beyond. All of that is being withheld from us. And, that is why we need UFO disclosure so badly, because they are hiding these secrets. At the same time, they're shooting at UFOs while seeming to work with the occupants of other UFOs, seeming to have engaged humanity in some sort of cosmic conflict that we may not want to be in, and we certainly can't trust the UFO control group to have picked the right side. Are they shooting at these guys, or are they working with these guys, or are these guys if they're still around, just spectators today. Are they still involved with humanity if they were back then? Will they be involved with humanity in the future? I don't know, guys. I don't have answers to any of these questions, but if you have some ideas, let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, we've got a new NAZCA mummy to talk about. Okay, here we go. Here's the unveiling of the new mummy. Everybody's all gathered around, very excited to see this new specimen from NAZCA. I believe this is from NAZCA. There are a few different locations where these bodies have been recovered. One is in Mexico. This is from Inkari Institute. Hopefully they'll let me get away with showing this unveiling without getting a copyright claim. But I think it's nice to see everybody be all excited. There's Thierry Jaman getting their first peek at this specimen. Now some of these guys, I think Thierry and maybe a few others have already had this examined and they've had x-rays done, and we're about to see what some of that looks like. So let's get into that. And yeah, here is the actual specimen. You can see it has kind of a conical head there, and it's it's got long arms that reach all the way down past its middle, and it's got kind of shortened legs, it looks like to me. And it's in this interesting sitting position or curled up position, which is very similar to the other specimen that is very similar to that, that is named Suje, if I'm saying that right. And there we go. You can see its face. You can see the little eyes and the little mouth. Very, very interesting. And but yeah, it's all right. So there we go. There's another shot of it, face on. And we have more information. More information. There we go. Okay. All right. What is interesting? All right. There we go. There we go. All right. More videos of it. Now, what's interesting is that this being has wing-like appendages, very similar to Suje, and it has eggs in its abdomen. This is amazing. This is amazing. So yeah, look at that. And it also apparently has multiple implants in it. Look at that. Look at that. That's so cool. And we're going to get into more of the stuff. Here's the x-rays that have been done on this specimen. And you can see the eggs, and you can see the implants in this being. Crazy. These were high-tech beings, or at least whoever created them was high-tech enough to put these implants in them. And here's Suje, the other very similar specimen. Suje doesn't appear to have quite as conical a head, but it's very, very similar. It's in a very similar position, and it has the wing-like structures. So Suje wasn't a one-off. There are multiple of these beings with these wing-like structures. Now they're probably not wings. They probably are, you know, who knows what they are. But they're very interesting appendages. And okay, so Nico, who actually speaks French, was able to translate some of the documentary to us, or the unveiling to us. He says, she doesn't have a brain like us. The brain is completely different. The bones are different. The body is biologically completely different from the other mummies. What does that mean? The most crazy thing, Nico says, is the 12 implants. 12 implants. That's nuts. She even has a bracelet. Okay, let's go back, see if we can make out the bracelet. Bracelet. That's not it. Okay. Spoiler for tomorrow's show. Possibly. All right. Okay. Bracelet. Is that the bracelet? Yeah, okay. I think I can see that. I'd love a zoom in on that bracelet, if that's what that is. Some implants have a gold color. The abdomen is large compared to the rest of the body. The mummy came from the same location as the other mummies, so it is a NAZCA mummy. Maria is the product of the hybridization of 4 species. Thierry said Maria's DNA is public and can be accessed by anybody. A U.S.-based university in Peru to study the mummies is in Peru to study the mummies. Okay, excellent. So we do have some U.S. People on this. It's not exclusively Peruvians and and people from Mexico. Same with universities in Finland and the Netherlands. Well, the European universities are not in Peru yet. Thierry is saying a lot of scientists are starting to take the mummies seriously. That is great news. That is awesome news. A famous ufologist will be in Cusco soon for the mummies, but I've never heard the name and I can't figure out what the name is. This is all from Nico, friend of the channel who many of you will be familiar with. If you're not, go check out those excellent interviews with Nico where he has some fascinating inside information on the UFO control group. Just really amazing stuff. And of course, he speaks French and is able to translate Thierry's video. So just a really intriguing specimen, very similar to Suje, but with a more conical head, also has the wing-like structures and eggs. Man, I can't wait to see some top-notch science done on those eggs. Wouldn't that be amazing? There are alien embryos in those eggs, to all appearances. Maybe alien is a strong word. Hybrid, probably a better word. Yeah. Anyway, it's so fascinating. I love it. This is disclosure. I'm so happy to see that some American scientists and doctors are getting on this in a bigger way, because we've had a couple of them already. But that's what it's going to take, is for Western scientists and doctors to evaluate this fairly, and obviously to reach a conclusion that they're legitimate in order for this to be more widely accepted. If it's only people south of the border looking at this, it's not going to be widely accepted, unfortunately. So stupid. We have the director of a hospital in Mexico presiding over a live CAT scan, verifying the authenticity of a couple of the specimens, and it's not taken seriously. It's just disgusting. It's just disgusting, but it is what it is. Anyway, a really cool specimen. Obviously we're going to have to wait until March for Jaime Maussan's presentation, which has grown, apparently. It's going to be a much bigger presentation. I'm really, really excited about that. I mean, this is UFO disclosure, guys. We've got bodies, guys. We've got bodies, y'all. We've got alien bodies, alien hybrid bodies. This is amazing. This is disclosure. And I love that there are different subspecies of these beings. The ones with the little wing-like structures, whatever they are, big ones, giant ones, the other classic NAZCA mummies that we're all familiar with that don't have wings but are, roughly similar in size to these winged ones. I'm just going to call them that, even though they're probably not wings. What are those things? They could be wings. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts about this new specimen and everything else in the comments below. But something's going on in Peru and has been going on for a long time. The mummies are thousands of years old, but there was other stuff going on as well, maybe or maybe not related. This is from the debrief. Ancient megalithic structure older than the Egyptian pyramids discovered in the Peruvian Andes. A team of anthropologists from the University of Wyoming and the University of California, Santa Barbara, has discovered an ancient megalithic structure in the Peruvian Andes that is older than the Great Pyramids of ancient Egypt. Dated to around 2750 BC using radiocarbon dating techniques, the circular stone plaza was built using massive vertical stones placed in upright positions. The construction method is similar to other ancient sites from the ancient world, like Stonehenge, which is approximately the same age as the newly discovered stone plaza. However, the researchers say it is a construction style previously unseen in the Andes. So did a different civilization build this structure? Maybe one that had a connection with beings of higher learning. Again, who knows? But, very suggestive. Plenty of other stuff was going on in South America in the ancient world as well. The ancient mummies from Chile. This is, really interesting. When you hear the word mummy, you bet your mind goes straight to the Egyptian mummies. But the oldest mummies belongs to the Chinchorro people of Chile's Atacama Desert, who mummified their dead 7,000 years ago. And you might recognize that word Atacama from the very interesting specimen brought to Gary Nolan. He debunked that specimen, but many aren't satisfied by that debunking, myself included. But yeah, I'll let you read the rest of the article at your leisure, but really interesting that they were building megalithic structures. They are mummifying their dead. All very fascinating and, again, very suggestive. But, of course, not all contact in South America is pleasant. Here's an article from anomalien.com. Missing policeman found in shock and claims he was abducted by aliens. Yes, this is a really scary story. A mysterious story happened in Argentina near the city of General Pico in March 2006 with 30-year-old one policeman Luis Sergio Pacheta with the rank of corporal. He was on patrol when a comrade asked him to cover part of his jurisdiction on his day off. He began patrolling at 7:30 p.m., and there was a strange glow in the woods. He thought it was poachers, but it wasn't poachers. And he had this terrifying incident. He was missing. They went out looking for him, and then they found him in an area where they had previously searched, much like the missing 411 incidents. But he was alive, but he was in shock and traumatized. So traumatized that he actually quit the force, or actually was fired from the force because he couldn't show up. He remembers a few things from being taken and what he was shown by the beings. He says he remembered something like, I felt like I was inside my mother's belly, and then I started remembering things from my childhood. It was like my life in slow motion. I don't know how long it lasted. Almost seems like he had some sort of a life review like people have in a near-death experiences, although this one was very unpleasant, unfortunately. They detected burns on his feet with blisters and small dots in between, lasting for some time. He insisted on being taken to a dark room because the light caused him intense pain. Some scary stuff going on in South America. The phenomenon that is occurring there's some really good stuff and some positive stuff that has occurred there, but also a lot of scary stuff as well, occurring probably in the past and still occurring today. But there are many, many mysteries of the ancient world in South America. Very ancient, in fact. Stunning rock art site reveals that humans settled the Colombian Amazon 13,000 years ago. And this is the rock art found at the Serranía de la Lindosa, an archaeological site on the northern edge of the Colombian Amazon. Fascinating stuff, guys. The human settlement goes back a long way there. Meanwhile, research continues on the NAZCA mummies. The anatomy, the furcula, is more prominent on the male specimens than the female specimens. What is a furcula? The union of clavicles is called a furcula. This characteristic is present in these specimens. Theropods, extinct dinosaurs, and their descendants with this similar structure where both clavicles are fused to form a single bone. So they have elements of theropods. They also have hollow bones, some of them. So, they have scaly skin, they've got eggs, very reptilian or even dinosaur-like. What are theropods? Well, these guys. Those are theropods, like the T-Rex, the two-legged, upright, three-toed dinosaurs that still exist today in the form of birds. Those are theropods. So could the NAZCA mummies be related in some way to these creatures? or are they entirely created elsewhere? And could any of this be connected to a subterranean city of serpent people? We've just talked about the reptilian aspects of these beings. Well, local legends talk about serpents a lot. Serpent mythology comes up a lot in that part of the world, and serpent motifs, like we're seeing here in this cave or this structure. Now these guys are trying to drum up tours. This is a trailer for their tourism business, but that's not to say there's not something there. Yeah, the Amaru, whatever, the city of snakes. And this is really interesting. There's some sort of shaft that goes down. And when you uncover this rock and put the cocoa leaves over it, you can see how the air comes out of the shaft. Very, very fascinating. I'd be tempted to take a tour. So yeah, I'm very curious to know more about the City of Serpents, and if the mythology surrounding that has anything to do with the Nazca mummies or associated beings. Obviously, serpent mythology, like I said, comes up a lot in South America, around the world really, but especially in South America. There's the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, from Aztec culture, and many others. Speaking of the Amaru, we just talked about the City of the Serpents and that you may have seen the word Amaru. In the mythology of Andean civilizations of South America, the Amaru or Katari is a mythical serpent or dragon. In Inca mythology, Amaru is a huge double-breasted serpent that dwells underground at the bottom of lakes and rivers. Very interesting. Now, of course, if there were non-human beings interacting with the peoples of South America in ancient times, it might be important to keep in mind that not all of those cultures were like super positive cultures. They almost all practiced human sacrifice. Not great. Not great. Now, it is maybe important to keep in mind that Quetzalcoatl, the god, was opposed to human sacrifice. It's also weird that some gods, like Quetzalcoatl, are depicted not simply as serpents, but as white guys with beards. That's just so weird how that, seems to be a thing. Of course, not all of them had beards. Viracocha did not have a beard, according to pictures like this. And he created the universe, sun, moon, and stars, and in time by commanding the sun to move over the sky and civilization itself. Viracocha was worshipped as god of the sun and of storms. He was represented as wearing the sun for a crown, with thunderbolts in his hands and tears descending from his eyes as rain. He was described as a man of medium height, white, and dressed in white robe like an alb secured around the waist, that he carried a staff and his book in his hands. Now, many people think that Quetzalcoatl may have been an Atlantean, and that he may have, the civilization bringer, the myth of the Atlantean civilization bringer, Graham Hancock comes up or speaks about this a lot and has talked about many examples from various mythologies around the world of a mysterious figure showing up over the sea, bringing civilization. And, many people think, those mythologies point to survivors of Atlantis coming to, spread civilization from their vanished culture. Of course, they don't, were the Atlanteans white? If you listen to Bashar, if you're familiar with the channeled entity Bashar, he says that the Atlanteans were brown-skinned. So that wouldn't apply. But other accounts differ and, claim the Atlanteans look more Grecian. So if Quetzalcoatl wasn't an Atlantean, and he may well have been an Atlantean, could he have been a Viking? We know the Vikings were over there, but they seem to have been at a much later period in time. So I don't think it was the Vikings. But where else would they have learned of men with full beards, right? How would they have gotten that idea? Well, one idea might be the Paracas beings, the elongated skull people of Paracas, which, as you can see, they had red hair, some of them. And DNA tests show that in the one DNA test that I looked at, the DNA had degraded to a point where they couldn't tell where one of the parents came from. but the other parent came from Scotland, hence the red hair. So could they have had beards? Could this idea of bearded individuals with high knowledge not have come from Atlantis, but come from the Paracas elongated skull people, whoever they were? But you know, these figures almost look more Asian to me. He's got kind of slanted eyes. Even the way their beards are shaped, to me, might look a little bit more Asian. Obviously, no elongated skulls in these figures. Maybe the people, making these sculptures didn't have access to the real people and didn't know they were elongated skull people. Or maybe they simply weren't elongated skull people and they were just regular humans. Well, have Asians ever gone to the Americas in the ancient times? There is some talk about that, right? There is some talk about that. Did China discover America? This map claims that Columbus was beaten to it by a Chinese Muslim. But is it real? In 1405, a Chinese Muslim eunuch, Jing He, launched the first of 7 voyages west from China across the Indian Ocean. Over the next 30 years, in command of the world's largest fleet and funded by the Ming Emperor, he sailed to the east coast of Africa and deep into the Persian Gulf. That much we know is true, but some people believe he went much further, and this map is one reason. Entitled General Chart of the Integrated World, it is apparently an 18th century copy of a 1418 map, which claims to show the world that Jing He discovered. And that was the Americas, as you can clearly see. Now, this is heavily debated, and some people think this has been debunked, and maybe it has. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there. Obviously, again, this would have been much later on in the timeline. But could they have, could the Chinese or people from Asia come to the Americas before then? Might they have been considered white or light-skinned by the peoples of that area? Entirely possible, guys. Just let me know what your favorite theory explaining some of the mysteries of South America and Central America are in the comments below. I wish I had some answers, but the mysteries are certainly tantalizing and intriguing. Guys, this is huge. Literally. Jaime Maussan says they are going to present giant bodies to us. That's right. This is an update on the NAZCA mummy situation. Well, I've already shown you the large 3-fingered hands of the supposed giant beings. Well, apparently there are whole bodies. So let's talk about that in a general NAZCA mummy update. Okay, let's just get right to it. This is what Jaime Maussan had to say.
Es extraordinario. Quiero decirle, como una exclusiva de este programa, que en Perú también se han encontrado gigantes, pero en este caso cuerpos. Es todo lo que voy a adelantar porque viene mucho más y pues estamos cada vez más cerca de la verdad y afortunadamente ahora la sociedad civil tiene las evidencias, no las tienen los gobiernos y por eso finalmente van a salir a la luz. Es extraordinario. Quiero decir.
There you go. It's all going to come to light because the government can't suppress it because they don't have it. The governments have been suppressing it forever. Possibly the Ministry of Culture of Peru, for example. But that is no longer going to happen because they don't have the bodies. Civilians have the bodies, and this is all coming out. When is it coming out? When are these giant bodies going to be released? Is this going to be at the the Peru UFO hearing coming up shortly? Or is this going to be, released to us in some other venue, another Mexican UFO hearing perhaps? Well, time will tell, but it is exciting days, guys. We are going to get, it looks like, giant bodies, guys. This is amazing. And I assume these are the giant bodies that go with the giant hands, but I guess time will tell. And of course, here are the giant hands, the huge hands, one with that weird thing in it, that implant, presumably. But look at that. Giant hands. That's crazy. Meanwhile, Peru attacks. It's just been confirmed hundreds more alien bodies. This is a bombshell. 2024 is going to be insane. Now, yeah, I guess if they do have hundreds of bodies, that would be a bombshell. And 2024 is going to be insane. J. Alberto says, affirmativo. It's going to happen. So, we'll see, guys. If indeed we get hundreds of bodies released to study and to scrutiny, as well as the beings or the bodies of giant beings, I don't see how they can keep a lid on this any longer. Will that actually happen? I mean, Lucy in the football, right? But, hey, it could happen. It sounds like it's going to happen. Again, we'll see, but fingers crossed. Now, this is really interesting from Jaime Maussan also. The government of Peru has received an order based on the transparency laws under file number, in that file number, in order to recognize and issue a report on the DNA of the biological evidence of NAZCA 2 with 20% of unknown origin to science. Now, I'm still gathering information on this. The idea that I have heard is that, Peru is trying to get these bodies back from Mexico under the guise that they are cultural relics. And if it can be proven that they were in fact at one point living beings through this DNA testing, then they will not be cultural relics anymore. They will be bodies. And then Peru cannot confiscate them or seize them or demand them back. That's my rough understanding of what is going on. But again, I'm still trying to gather information on that. And if you see it before I do, let me know, because that is really juicy if we are having a legal battle over the NAZCA mummies play out between countries in the fate of the NAZCA mummies, and potentially UFO disclosure could hang in the balance of this legal battle in these DNA tests. Exciting times, guys. Oh, and I just wanted to share this cute animation somebody made about the NAZCA beings, living beings in this case. It's got music playing, so I can't play the audio, but it's just music. And there, of course, is Thierry Hamann, I believe. So there you go. I thought that was really cute. Man, I just can't wait to see where this goes from here. We've got bodies, guys. This is crazy. And man, I just can't wait to see where this goes from here. We've got bodies of non-humans. They've got reptilian skin. Some of them have implants. Some of them have eggs. I can't wait to see the study of those eggs. Where are the people? Where's Gary Nolan studying those eggs? I mean, why aren't more people interested in investigating this? I know Gary got burned on a previous body that was not one of the NAZCA beings. But that's get back on the horse, Gary. Get back on the horse, because this is UFO disclosure. Unless by some chance they evolved naturally here on Earth, which I guess is always theoretically possible. Maybe they went underground, and that's why there's a gap in the fossil record. But still, that's a pretty big gap. You got humanoid, intelligent, technological beings. Must have evolved over, millions of years, and there's no sign of that at all in the fossil record. Nah, come on, give me a break, guys. This has got to have an ET explanation, right? This is UFO disclosure. But hey, if it is, if these were created by some natural process of terrestrial evolution, then that is also pretty much the biggest story that's ever happened. So get on this, guys. What are these bodies? If there really are 20 or 100 or more of these bodies of all shapes and sizes, that have been studied by 40 plus doctors and scientists over a period of years. We've got CAT scans, x-rays, DNA tests, etc. Where is the science being done on this? This is so frustrating. Where is the greater science being done on this? Where is the mainstream science? It just drives me crazy. Meanwhile, here's a front view of the NAZCA mummy Suje. the guy with the wing-like appendages or whatever those things are back there. And here's an x-ray of him. In this one, it looks more like yeah, no, it's still coming off the middle of his back. But yeah, check that out. Check that out. That's crazy. And there's a wonderful translated presentation from Dr. Irving Zuniga, who removed the implants located in the 60 centimeter NAZCA mummy. It's a really great presentation. It's 12 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's also really great proof that these were not dolls or constructed artifacts of any sort. The bone was growing on these implants, clearly showing that it was implanted while these beings were alive. Here's just a little bit of that.
To a cellular level, which this process is called osseointegration or bone integration. The green arrows signal the bone that is attached to that metallic structure that should be a teeth implant that is made of titanium, and it has been extracted. This metal has been extracted from the living organism, and it has been taken from with parts of bone. We can see that there's a lot of bone, like soft bone, and we can see that the other two inferior green arrows, you can see bones, harder bones that have been fused to the bone, to that metal.
Bone is fused to the metal, guys. Bone is fused to the metal. Not dolls, not artifacts. These were living beings when these implants were put in them. They were living beings, guys. They were living beings. We are living in an age where we have non-human beings being studied by professionals, and we have multiple hearings presenting the evidence of these beings. And hopefully in a few days we'll get one from Peru that will be very positive with a lot of new information, and we are going to get hopefully a freaking giant being unleashed upon us, guys. A giant. I love it, guys. I love it, but let me know what you think. There you go. I hope you have enjoyed this review of the research that's been done on the NAZCA mummies. I hope you found it informative, and you know, if you were on the fence about it, maybe you're less on the fence now. I sure hope so. Either way, I hope you give this video a big thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. Smash the like button, the subscribe button. Join me on social media. If you want to support Cosmic Road, consider buying a coffee mug or a t-shirt in the merch store below, or by becoming a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. Meanwhile, there are plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.